Suburban Sentinel here, bringing you practical advice for a chaotic world. Today I'm going to be doing a gun review on the Ruger Gunsight Scout Rifle. Ruger introduced the Scout Rifle about a year and a half, 2 years ago with a lot of hype and fanfare. Ruger collaborated with the Gunsight Academy in Arizona on this firearm. The Scout Rifle is billed as the rifle that the late Jeffrey Cooper, who ran Gunsight for many years, envisioned as a Scout Rifle. I have on the screen here Ruger's website with the Scout page. And I do have a real one of these, but I just wanted to show pictures of it in its unadulterated factory format because mine has some modifications. Although Ruger has had very good success with the Scout Rifle, the design is quite polarizing. Some say the Scout Rifle is a solution looking for a problem. Now, I'm not sure if the Ruger Scout is what Colonel Cooper had in mind. Moreover, I'm not exactly sure what a Scout Rifle is. But in my opinion, it really doesn't matter. The important thing is that this little oddball carbine fits into my humble gun collection and is quite useful. Now, I'll talk more about that later. As with any gear review, I'll go down the checklist, and the first item is form, fit, and function. This Ruger Scout Rifle kind of reminds me of a cross between Grandpa's deer rifle and a junior mall ninja carbine. The Scout is chambered in the hard-hitting .308 cartridge, and it's a bolt gun with a Mauser style action. It's carbine length with a barrel of 16.5 inches. The Scout Rifle utilizes a detachable box magazine, and one of the more unusual features of this rifle is a forward-mounted Picatinny rail, allowing the use of either an intermediate eye relief or a long eye relief type Scout scope. So now that we've hit the highlights, I'm going to shift the camera over to the real thing. Okay, so here we have the real thing. And no, it's not a camera trick. The bolt is on the left side of the gun because this particular model is a lefty. So thank you very much, Ruger, for being very nice to us of the Southpaw persuasion. So let's talk a little bit about how the gun performs. The first thing is accuracy. Now, accuracy is not the be-all, end-all for me because I'm a 3.5 MOA shooter out to 200, 250 yards on a good day. I'm not what you would call a precision shooter. I'm not really concerned about it because minute of bad guy is really good enough for me. And I can say with a high degree of confidence that the Scout Rifle will outshoot my capabilities. From other Scout Rifle owners I've talked to, I've heard everything from sub-MOA to about 2 MOA, and that certainly sounds reasonable to me. Moving on to the action, this is a bolt gun with a Mauser style action that overall I really like. The Mauser action is a decades old proven design. This particular iteration of it from Ruger appears to be extremely robust, and since it's the same action that goes into many of the M77 type rifles, I would expect it to be very, very reliable and very durable. On the downside, the action is not very smooth, and I've heard this is a common complaint from many Scout Rifle and M77 owners. Out of the box, my particular rifle was pretty rough. Now, it has smoothed out somewhat, and I've put probably 200, maybe 250 rounds through it and have done some dry firing, but the action is certainly not what I would consider smooth by any stretch. It's not a deal breaker, but it does kind of bug me, especially at a $1,000 MSRP on this rifle. If mine doesn't smooth out some more, I'll probably give it over to a smith. I don't expect that the action on my rifle will ever be buttery smooth, but there is a fair amount of room for improvement. Okay, let's move on to the magazines. The Scout rifle is unusual for a bolt action, again because it uses detachable box magazines. And these are a real strong point of the Scout system. The factory mags are wonderful, although somewhat expensive. The mags you get from Ruger have the Ruger logo stamped on them, but these are made by Accurate Mag. And I do have a fair amount of experience with 308 magazines from this company. These magazines are strong, very reliable, very robust. A big criticism of the Scout rifle is that you can't top off the steel magazines from the receiver while you're in the field. I don't really see that as a big downside. With a 5-round mag, you can just stick another one in and top it off when you get a chance. Or with a 10-round mag, it's pretty unlikely that you would be under circumstances of having to do so. Now, I know Ruger has recently come out with some polymer mags for the Scout rifle, and I have heard that there have been problems with those. Unless and until the polymer magazines have a good solid history of extraordinary reliability in the field, I'm going to stick with the Accurate mags. And as you can see, they come in both a 5 and 10 round flavor. Talking briefly about the trigger, it is very smooth, especially for a production gun. Breaks cleanly and has a moderate amount of pull. It's perfectly acceptable for a utility type rifle, and I wouldn't touch the trigger at all. I've heard some criticisms that the trigger guard is Zytel or polymer rather than aluminum or steel, and I have been in touch with Ruger about that very issue, and according to Ruger, the Zytel ones are more drop resistant, or more resistant to breakage from being dropped or from rough handling. And I'll take Ruger at their word on that. I haven't had any problem with mine, but time will tell. Out of the box, the Ruger Scout comes with iron sights, a ghost ring rear that's adjustable for both windage and elevation. And I'll see if I can get a little... And the front sight is a classic post with protective ears. I have not shot my Scout with the irons very much, but they are very good as far as I'm concerned. I'm pretty impressed with the way the gun handles. It's a reasonable weight for a 308, coming in at 7 pounds even with no magazine and no scope. For me, the recoil seems fairly light, especially for a 308, but I am not recoil sensitive. I stand about 6'3" and 300 pounds, so there's a lot of mass to absorb that weight. Someone of a smaller stature might have a more thrilling experience with the recoil, but I still think it would be manageable. Let me zoom in here. The Scout rifle comes with a rubber butt pad with a non-slip backing, and that seems to do a very good job at absorbing the recoil. One of the best features of this rifle is the adjustable length of pull. As you can see down there at the butt pad, there are some spacers. I believe the Scout rifle came with 2 extra spacers, and by removing 2 hex head screws on the butt pad, you can change the length of pull, and with that one spacer, the rifle fits into my shoulder perfectly. Now again, I'm 6'3", and there's still another spacer available, so anyone up to probably 6'6", 6'7", should be able to use the Scout rifle very comfortably, unless their knuckles drag on the ground. Although the recoil seems perfectly manageable to me, the muzzle blast is significant. The combination of that big 308 cartridge and the short 16.5-inch barrel will get your attention. I can guarantee you will not fall asleep shooting this rifle. This is the standard Ruger mini style flash suppressor that's been in use for decades. I have not shot this particular rifle in low light, but I have no reason to think that it wouldn't be effective. Anyway, the factory flash suppressor can be easily removed and replaced with something else or left off. Moving on to firepower, not much to say there. It's a 308. Now let's talk logistics, which I call the ilities: reliability, maintainability, durability. It's a bolt gun with a Mauser action, so I would expect 150% reliability for many, many decades. And so far the Scout rifle has not disappointed me one bit. Maintainability, pull one lever and the bolt handle retracts out, and I'll do that on the bench. Very, very easy maintenance, very easy to deal with out in the field. With such a short track record, it's difficult to predict the ultimate durability, but given that it's a M77 based rifle, bolt action, Mauser type, I think it would be safe to say that one could expect many, many, many years of good service from this rifle. So I'm going to take this back inside and we'll talk some more specifics. Okay, we're back inside with the Ruger Gunsight Scout rifle, and just a few more of the gory details on this weapon. And I think you can see in the background the cat is going to help. First, we have the furniture is a laminated wood. It's kind of a blackish gray wood. I don't know exactly what it is. It's fine looking. I'm not much into the looks of my firearms. For me, they're 99% utilitarian. But anyway, it is a nice looking stock. The magazine release is here in front of the trigger guard. You simply just push it, and it's a very positive engaging and disengaging the magazine. No problems with that at all. Of course, up here we have the bolt handle, and right behind it is a 3-position safety. You have fire, safe, and locked. In the locked position, the bolt will not move. In the safe position, you can cycle the bolt, but the weapon will not fire. And of course, in the fire position, you're ready to roll. To remove the bolt, simply just make sure the bolt is unlocked. Release the bolt. We'll do a quick chamber check. And then you simply flip the gun to the opposite side. And let's make sure we get this on camera. There's just a very small lever here. You pull out. And make it back up. Pull that lever out and the bolt simply releases. And it's that easy. And we'll do a little close-up of the bolt mechanism here. As you can see, it's quite beefy. And that's basically all there is to field stripping. First, I want to address something that's often overlooked in gun reviews. Most everybody puts in all the technical details about the gun and opinions and performance, and that's great. But the one thing that I think is very important is not the what, but the why. In other words, how does this particular firearm, whether it's a Gunsight Scout rifle or anything else, fit into the gun collector's strategy or collection or whatever you'd like to call it? In other words, why would somebody want to own this gun? Now, there are people out there, I'm sure many of you included, who can have a great number of firearms as a hobby or for the enjoyment or for collecting or whatever. Unfortunately, I'm not in that position right now, and every gun in my collection, which is quite modest, must fulfill a particular purpose or role. Prior to buying this scout rifle, I was in the market for some type of bug out gun. And I think that warrants some discussion. Now, I'm not one who's convinced that there will be a mass panic or a widespread disaster or end of the world as we know it type of scenario. Certainly it could happen, or there could be a major catastrophe. Bugging out of our home is not a scenario I really want to be in. In fact, it is probably about the worst case scenario for us for a variety of reasons. First, bugging out just may be an impossibility. My wife and I live in an area where there are 25 million people crammed into a space that's maybe the size of one or two decent sized ranches in Texas. So roadways will undoubtedly, unless you have forewarning, be jammed. And that could be a tremendous problem just in and of itself. Second, my wife and I own several animals, including the cat here who's helping us with filming. And we certainly would not even consider leaving any of our critters behind, no matter what the circumstances. And that would be a problem. And of course, emergency shelters don't accept animals. At least they don't to the best of my knowledge. Not that we'd be so thrilled to go to one, but I don't think that would be an option for us. And third, we have nowhere else to go. We don't own a second home out in the country or anything like that, own property anywhere. So our strategy, unless there's a disaster of truly epic proportions, is to hunker down and do the best we can where we are with what we've got. If circumstances were such that we did in fact have to make that very difficult decision to bug out, things would be really, really bad. So a bug out scenario would necessarily involve bringing long arms. And as far as long arms goes, we knew for sure that we wanted to bring at the very least two. One would be a Ruger 1022. Of course, that's the ubiquitous 22 caliber long rifle model. It's been made since probably the early 60s. The advantages of the 1022 are, first, its ease of use with virtually no recoil and very simple operation. Just about anybody can shoot it. Second, it's a fairly decent performing rifle for what it is. You can send a lot of lead down range with a 25 round magazine, and that will get people's attention. And third, you can carry thousands and thousands of rounds of 22 caliber ammunition in a very small and lightweight package. So the Ruger 1022 is a definite bring along for us. But again, the 1022 is certainly not a great defensive weapon. As part of our bug out plan, I wanted a larger caliber rifle that was a heavy hitter. Now, in choosing a weapon for this purpose, I had certain parameters. First, it had to be a relatively common caliber so that the ammunition would be easy to find and keep in stock at home. Second, the gun had to be extremely reliable. Since we were going to be in a bad situation anyway, I didn't want anything that was finicky. Third, the firearm had to be very easy to maintain out in the field under adverse circumstances. My first inclination was to get a proven battle rifle, specifically an AK-47 platform with the 7.62 x 39 cartridge, which I think would have been a wonderful choice. And to this day, I probably still would have gone that route, but for AKs in every single variant thereof are illegal in my state. I know that seems crazy, and that's because it is crazy, but that's the law, so I can't legally buy an AK-47. I think that pretty much would have been ideal. Now, technically, I already had a battle rifle and still do. My wife and I own an AR, chambered in 5.56. That's a good weapon, but in my opinion, it does not fulfill the role under the parameters we accepted. First, I'm not a big fan of the 5.56 cartridge. I know we could debate this till the cows come home, but the 223 cartridge it originated from was designed for hunting varmints. And quite frankly, I don't understand why the US government decided that all of a sudden this was a battle rifle cartridge when .30 caliber had been proven for decades. But be that as it may, I'm not comfortable with the 5.56 cartridge. As far as penetration through barriers, I think the performance leaves a lot to be desired. And if in a bug out situation, I want or at least one of our long guns to be able to penetrate cover, such as a car windshield or a car body. Secondly, the AR is not so terrific for having to do field maintenance. The gun likes to run wet. I believe all ARs do. And then if you have to take apart the bolt carrier group, there's a lot of little parts in there. And routine cleaning, maybe it's only every 1,000 rounds or whatever, but in my opinion, there are just better choices for field service weapons. Don't get me wrong, there are a lot of positive attributes to the AR. The commonality and interchangeability of parts, the ability to accessorize and customize your rifle easily. The ammunition is fairly lightweight and compact, and on and on. But my AR is essentially part of our homestead defense plan, not part of our bug out plan. So I looked at a lot of other weapons, specifically battle rifles. I looked at the SOCOMs and the FALs, and the PTR 91, the HK clone. And to be honest with you, none of them really did it for me. I don't know what it was about each particular one, but the combination of price and reliability or whatever the factors are, I just really wasn't impressed with any of those for my purposes in this situation. I'm not saying that any of them are bad weapons at all, but to me they just didn't quite fit my particular needs and my budget. Then I saw the Scout rifle. I can't remember where I first saw it. Maybe it was the SHOT Show or somewhere. But anyway, it caught my eye, and I didn't immediately decide to run out and buy it. It took a while for this to sink in as a possibility for the rifle to suit this particular purpose. And even after I bought it, I kept thinking that I really would have rather had an AK. However, now that I've lived with this rifle for a while, I think it would be a closer call. I might still go for the AK if I could legally do it, which I can't. But this rifle really is growing on me. I think this would be a good time to talk about the modifications I made. When I bought the Scout rifle, I was a little bit leery of the whole Scout scope concept of having the extended eye relief or long eye relief scope. But I did give it a shot, and I borrowed a Scout scope for a couple of days and mounted it on the Picatinny rail. And quite honestly, I didn't like it. Now, I'm not saying that Scout scopes are bad or the concept's bad. It just really didn't work for me. I wasn't used to it. I'd never used a scout scope before. And I like shooting both eyes open, but with a conventional scope mounted at the back of the receiver. Again, not taking anything away from those who use a scout scope, it just didn't feel very natural or comfortable to me. If I gave it a chance and used the scout scope that is, for a while, perhaps I would have gotten used to it. But right now, range time and ammunition money are at a premium for me, and I really just couldn't justify the time and expense of learning a new sort of system. So I decided to go with a conventional type scope. Using a conventional type scope came with some ancillary advantages as well, such as I could swap scopes between and among my existing rifles and not have one scope dedicated to a certain rifle, and I think that was an economic advantage. In support of that interchangeability among rifles, I didn't want to use the rings supplied by Ruger for mounting the scope. I wanted something that was kind of easy on, easy off. That was a problem though, because the Picatinny rail on the factory Scout is mounted only forward. So what I did is I purchased an aftermarket Picatinny, and you can see this on camera. Let me get in a little closer. This Picatinny rail runs from about mid-barrel length all the way back over the top of the ejection port. This gives the shooter the advantage of being able to take a conventional scope and mount it towards the back of the receiver and still use intermediate or long eye relief scopes and change them around. I believe the rail was about $90, and it's made by a company called XS Sight, and I'll put up their website information. Very good company, very good quality rail. Installation was no problem. The one disadvantage, at least purportedly a disadvantage, is that the rail does cover the ejection port, so you won't have as easy access to the guts of the rifle. But to me, that has not been a problem. I've never gotten a casing stuck because of it or anything like that. So I'm very happy with that particular setup. Once the XS rail was on, I bought a loopholed scope. This is a VXR Patrol scope. It's a 1.1 to 4 illuminated reticle scope, and I'll do a separate review on this. A lot of folks told me that maximum 4-power magnification is insufficient. They're saying go to a 3x9 or a 4x10 or whatever scope. I kind of went against the crowd with that. This is a utility rifle. It doesn't have true 1-power, 0 magnification, but it's pretty close with 1.1. As a utilitarian rifle, I want to be able to shoot up close, probably more so than far away. I don't hunt. This is strictly a defensive rifle, and the chances of me being able to hit something at the 300, 400, 500 yard or 500 meter range is pretty remote, and the chances of there being a threat that far away from me is even more remote. So I'm fairly comfortable with the 1 to 4 power range. The bottom line, if it's more than 250 yards, 1, I probably don't need to shoot it, and 2, I probably wouldn't hit it anyway. So I'm pretty happy with it, at least this setup. Again, I'll do a separate review of the scope itself. A lot of my associates say that the Scout rifle was not a good choice because of the bolt action. Of course, a semi-automatic battle rifle will throw a lot more lead down range much more quickly than a bolt action, even if the action itself was quite smooth. And certainly I can't disagree with that logic. But the bottom line is I'm not going to be fighting the Taliban by myself. If there's a company of soldiers out there with battle rifles, I'm not going to stop them anyway, no matter what I have. So I think that this suits my purposes, and I do have the advantage of the reliability and ease of maintenance of a Mauser type bolt gun. One factor I didn't initially think of, if I had gotten a battle rifle such as an AK or a FAL, you could sling a lot of lead, but in a bug out situation, I'm not going to bring a lot of lead. 7.62 by 39 or 308 ammunition is pretty bulky and pretty heavy, and I'm not going to bring thousands and thousands of rounds of ammunition. I'm thinking more along the lines of maybe 100 to 120 rounds, and having a semi-automatic, it'd probably be very easy to exhaust that supply in a very short amount of time. A bolt gun, you'd probably be more inclined to select your targets carefully. Hopefully it'll never come to that. I don't foresee firing a shot in anger with this rifle, but if it came to that, I'm fairly comfortable that this was a decent choice. So let's do a quick summary of the advantages and disadvantages. The advantages of this rifle are its relatively compact size and lightweight, the reliability of the action, simplicity and ease of use are another big advantage. As far as disadvantages, the flip side of having the Mauser action is it's a slow rate of fire. As far as improvements I'd like to see, first and foremost, I'd like to see higher quality machining on the bolt. Again, that's not a deal breaker, but it is kind of annoying. Another thing I would really like to see is an option for a synthetic stock with a stainless barrel. And when I review a gun, I always pick one characteristic to me that really stands out. And there's no doubt for me that in this case, it's that Ruger offers the Scout rifle in this left-handed model. And I really do appreciate that from Ruger. Final issue to discuss is value. This is an expensive gun. The MSRP on the Scout is $995, street price of around $800, and I paid just around $800 plus the excess sight rail, and I bought 4 or 5 extra magazines, not from Ruger but from Accurate Mag. I think just on the rifle and with the sling, I'm into it for around $1,200, plus the cost of the scope. Not cheap by any stretch. Do I think it's worth it? Yeah, I do. If I had multiple gun safes with a lot of rifles, I don't think I would have spent that much money on this particular model. But in my case, I really do think it is a decent value. In our household, we have exactly 4 long guns. We have a 12 gauge pump shotgun. We have this Scout rifle. We have an AR and the 1022. So with only 4 long arms, we can spend a little bit more on each one because we don't have a safe full of a variety of firearms suitable for any particular purpose. So I do think for the money, it's versatile enough that it's serving us well. So that's all I have to say about the Scout rifle itself. I'll do a separate review on this scope. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe, and all enlightening comments are welcome. This is the Suburban Sentinel. Shoot safely, everybody.